I believe that I am live. And if that is the case, welcome to program number 160 on Facebook and YouTube con Salsa Live. This Saturday, a very special program. And we'll be here for an hour instead of the 2 hours because my guest is very busy. And it happens that tonight I will be emceeing a very special event here in the city of Boston. So therefore, I'm going to have to scoot out of here rather early. But we'll have a conversation for about an hour and a couple minutes. So stay tuned right where you are. Share this with your friends. My guest, as I mentioned before, is none other than the one and only, our dear friend, Miguel Zenón. Bienvenidos a otra edición del programa Con Salsa en vivo aquí en Facebook y YouTube. Por favor, compartan con sus amistades. Hoy es sábado. Solamente lo estoy haciendo los domingos, pero este día tengo un invitado muy especial que está de gira y por ende tiene un espacio de tiempo para estar con nosotros para un conversatorio. Así que es ahí donde estén sintonizados. Es nada más y nada menos que el gran Miguel Zenón. Así que no se vayan, quédense ahí, compartan con sus amistades para escuchar esta conversación, como también música, su nueva propuesta musical, Música de las Américas. And before I introduce our guests who will be joining us momentarily, a couple of quick things. I mentioned that today's program is going to be a short program, and the only reason for that is that today is the annual Holgorio Navideño. It'll be the 33rd year, and our dear friend Jorge Arce will be receiving the Lucia Myerson David Lifetime Achievement Award, and I will be there as Master of Ceremonies. So therefore, it coincides with the fact that Miguel can be with us for an hour, and I have to scoot out to make it in time for the celebration. We will also be celebrating Diego Perez, known as Young Pueblo, an author who's doing quite well. He's an alumni of the TAG program, a graduate of Boston Latin Academy here in the city of Boston. So we're looking forward to joining both of them in this celebration. So before we start, Música de las Américas. Why is this album so important for me? It's the latest recording by our dear friend, the multi-talented saxophonist Miguel Zenón. It's titled Música de las Américas. Miguel is a composer, educator, multiple Grammy nominee and Guggenheim and MacArthur fellow who is widely considered as one of the most groundbreaking and influential saxophonists and composers of his generation. In my humble opinion, this is me, in my humble opinion, I think that Música de las Américas is Miguel's magnum opus. And he and I will be talking about this album, and I'll explain why I feel this way. But the themes are the pre-Columbian indigenous people, the post-Columbian oppression and exploitation and rapacious of the Europeans, the seafaring cultures of the Caribbean, the concept of America, not as a country, as in the United States of America, but more historically correctly, America as a continent. And when I read the liner notes and press release, I learned that he was inspired by the history of the American continent and special time during the pandemic that he spent reading Las Venas Abiertas de América Latina, Open Veins of Latin America, 5 centuries of the pillage of a continent, which details Western exploitation of South America's resources, and it was published in 1971 by Uruguayan writer Eduardo Galeno and Sebastian Robu. That was the other author who wrote Taínos y Caribes. And these two major societies who inhabited the Caribbean prior to European colonization. Taínos we're familiar with, those of us from Puerto Rico, of course, and the Caribes as well. And I immediately purchased the books and read them during the summer in order to better appreciate Miguel's album, but also to gain knowledge about Native and Indigenous people throughout the Americas. And so it's with the great honor and pleasure and privilege that my guest today will be Miguel Zenón. Let me put some music, and then I'm going to bring him on. So don't go away. Un poco de música, y entra entonces Miguel Zenón.
Y sigue la salsa con Salsa y José Mazo.
Bueno, mi gente, había dicho en inglés que la última grabación de nuestro amigo, querido amigo Miguel Zenón, se titula Música de las Américas. Y esta es la portada del disco. Vamos a enseñarle otra portada. Del disco Música de las Américas, su más reciente propuesta musical. Miguel estará en concierto en la área de Nueva Inglaterra. El próximo viernes estará en Jimmy's Jazz and Blues Club en Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Y el sábado estará en el Groton Music Performance Center en Groton, Massachusetts. Así que tendremos la oportunidad de verlo en concierto junto a su cuarteto. Había mencionado que esta grabación, para mí, en mi humilde opinión, es la obra magna de Miguel Zenón. Y con eso quiero decir que de todas estas grandes grabaciones que él ha hecho que son tremendas. Cada una de ellas a mí me impresiona y me quedo anonadado tan buenas que son. Esta para mí como que llega a otro nivel todavía de los niveles de música que nos ha presentado este colega y amigo Miguel Zenón. Así que vamos a platicar con él durante esta tarde, durante una hora, y luego me despido porque voy a ir a la actividad del Holgorio navideño para este año. So, to start things off, we're going to hear some music, just a little bit of this new CD. And I want you to enjoy just the sounds of this, inspired by, as mentioned before, the indigenous history of our people throughout the Américas and the whole concept of America. And I'm hoping that during this hour, both in English and Spanish, we'll be able to have a dialogue in which we will all appreciate the thinking behind this album, which in my opinion, again, I'm repeating myself, is a magnum opus. And so to start things off, we're going to hear one of the tunes, just a little bit, titled Taínos. Let me make sure I get it right. Taínos y Caribes, which is the opening track on this new album by Miguel Zenón. Para comenzar, vamos a escuchar un poco de la selección titulada Taínos y Caribes, que es la primera pieza que comienza el disco Música de las Américas. Con Miguel Zenón en el saxofón, escuchemos esta gran música. So stay tuned right where you are. Share this with your friends as we enjoy the music of Miguel Zenón and his new album, Música de las Américas. And the first song we're going to hear a little bit of is titled Taínos y Caribes with Miguel Zenón on the saxophone. Here we go. There you hear some of the music off this great new album, Música de las Américas, a great group of musicians accompanying my friend Miguel Zenón, who's going to join me at this moment, and I want to welcome him to today's program. Damas y caballeros, le doy la bienvenida a nuestro amigo, el gran Miguel Zenón, que ha sido tan gentil de aceptar mi invitación y pasar una hora con nosotros. Miguel, saludos y gracias por aceptar la invitación y darnos un poco de tu tiempo. Yo sé que estás sumamente ocupado con la gira.
Gracias, José. Un placer estar aquí. It's really my pleasure to be here once again. I want to say hello to everyone who's listening, and just happy to be here.
Well, I said that in my humble opinion, Miguel, and you know, I don't find words to express the music that you do, because I think I have every single one of your recordings except one that I found on your webpage, which was that I was not aware of, that I'm going to have to acquire. But I have all the other recordings. So I've seen you grow from your first recording to where you are today. And when I first heard this album, I was blown away. Yo me quedé, yo dije, ¿cómo es posible que Miguel Zenón siga trayendo una música que está a un nivel que nunca he oído en mi vida, y que me luce a mí que cada vez que tú produces algo se pone mejor, hasta que el día de hoy esta para mí es la mejor de todas las mejores, ¿ok? Así que te lo digo sinceramente. Pero
muchas gracias.
No, gracias a ti por compartir esta música. Pero la inspiración para mí al escuchar la música, the inspiration for me when I heard the music was knowing where the inspiration for you came from those two books that I mentioned. And when I hear the music, to be honest with you, Miguel, I envision every single title. I close my eyes and I can visually see what the title is telling me about. So when I hear Taínos and Caribes, I am transported to the Caribbean. I'm transported to Puerto Rico. I'm transported to the Dominican Republic. I'm transported to those places where we had, our indigenous communities. So let's talk about that inspiration of those two books. How was it you came across those two books? ¿Cómo fue que llegaste a estos dos libros?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm so glad to hear that the music has had a positive effect on your side. It's I don't take that lightly. Um, de verdad que un placer. Me alegro que lo hayas disfrutado. During the time that we were all at home and with a lot of time on our hands, at least we weren't touring and moving around like we usually do. Um, I found some time to do a little research and kind of delve into a couple of subjects that were just really of interest to me, and I had never really had the time to sit down and explore them with a little more depth. I mean, I'm always looking for information. I feel like we can never know enough, especially as you know, I'm very curious about our country and our part of the world, and being well informed about what it is that our ancestors and our history kind of laid down for us. So Las Venas Abiertas, this book this is a classic. This is a book that was written in the 70s by Eduardo Galeano, like you mentioned. I've known about the book for a while, and I always sort of glanced at it, but it was during this time that I was able to kind of dig into the book a little deeper. One of the things that really got to me about the book, I mean, apart from the fact that it was so well written and well researched, is that a lot of the things that Galliano talks about in the book, we could talk about them today. So a lot of these things are pretty much still happening.
Yes.
Basically the book deals with exploitation of Latin American resources by the powers that be, and how that's affected societies very deeply in every way. And of course, we all know that's still happening, not only in Latin America, but all over the world. And he talks a lot about history and the way kind of things came together, all the circumstances and all those different things. So I found that really interesting and really inspiring. And this other book you mentioned, Taínos y Caribes, I actually bought that book in Puerto Rico. Yo estaba allá en la isla. Siempre que voy a la isla trato de comprar libros, trato de comprar literatura. Me acuerdo que estábamos en una tienda que vamos mucho en el Río San Juan, que se llama Laberinto. Y ahí siempre compramos cosas. Me acuerdo que vi el libro y me pareció interesante. Mi esposa siempre está pendiente, mira, este libro se ve bien. Y me acuerdo que lo compré. Yo a veces los compro y los pongo como que los set them aside, ¿tú sabes? Y ahí cuando encontré el tiempo me puse a leerlo, y como tú mencionas, para nosotros que somos de Puerto Rico, la idea de lo que eran los taínos, por lo menos de nombre y de referencia, la tenemos bien presente. Y los caribes también, ¿no? Esta idea de esta sociedad, pero it's like anything, you know a little bit about something, but once you take a peek and go a little deeper into that rabbit hole, and you see a lot of these different layers and nuances, then it becomes a lot more interesting. So in the case of all this literature, that was the case. I knew a little bit about it before, but going a little deeper just kind of opened my mind for ideas. And a lot of times for something like this, you try to translate these ideas into a musical context. Sometimes that happens in a direct way. Sometimes it's not direct at all. You kind of have to translate it to some devise some kind of system. That's going to work. But the whole experience for me, it wasn't that different than the other projects that I worked on that are kind of coming from the same place. I stopped playing, all this, Maelo, the record Maelo. For me, it's really, I start with the research. I start with the interest, of course. And then I go into the research, and then the research really brings ideas and music and all that stuff.
And so cuando mencioné that I can close my eyes right now in the background, just so that folks can hear a little bit of this song, is one that I love. Let's hear a little bit. Navegando las estrellas nos guían. Miguel Zenón, Música de las Américas, in which you invited a great group of musicians, which I'll speak about momentarily because there are others, but here you have Los Paneros de la Cresta on this one, and you can just hear them right from the beginning. And again, when I heard this, cerré los ojos, aquí en mi estudio, me puse the headphones, and I was floating because I was seeing the stars. I was, in that zone. And as I heard La Pandera, I was like, especially at the end, cuando cantan, you took us to another place. So you're correct, of course, because you're the author of all this music, tú eres compositor, obviamente. But in your research, for me, what inspires your work for me is how it triggers the creativity that you're able to transmit what you've read, what you've learned into a music form that then the listener, me, gets to understand what it is you're sharing with us. At least that's my experience. And I'm sure other people have told you the same. Is that something that's come across your conversations?
Yeah, of course. I mean, one of the things that's magical about music and any art form really, but I feel music especially, and for all of us music lovers, is like, our reception to an idea or a message, musical message is very subjective. I mean, you have a certain frame of reference or certain things are familiar to you. So when you hear something like this, you kind of connect them to images and all the music you like. And for me, it's the same. The next person might be a little different. I feel like that's one of the most magical things about doing this is that, once you put it out there, it's really, it's for the taking. I could have an idea, but once I put it out there and you listen to it or someone else listen to it, it's like, it's there for them to really make it what they want to make it. Titles, of course, they serve as reference and liner notes. And once you get a little deeper into the information, that helps. But I feel that the real magical exchange is this idea of like me as a creator putting something out there, and then a listener just kind of grabbing it and just basically creating their own kind of story with the piece.
I can imagine you've done work that is multi-dimensional, multi-art. Identities is the album that comes to mind because we saw you perform that where you had multimedia as part of this. I can imagine a writer, I can imagine a poet, I can imagine a dancer, I can imagine a painter, a sculptor, any of those art forms listening to this and coming up with their interpretation of what they're hearing. And it won't be too far in the sense of what you're presenting. In other words, it'll be in that vein of the subject matter. I can see that, I can feel it, I can hear it, which is one of the things that makes this album in my mind so special because it just immediately has that transcendence of ability to be able to spoke into those other fields. Hold on a second while we say hello to some people. Por aquí vienen saludos de California, Manuel Castillo Freites, saludos. José Arroyo, espero verte on Jimmy's el viernes en Portsmouth, New Hampshire, o el sábado en Groton, en el musical, que es nuevo, así que tenemos que estar ahí para estrenarlo. Y saludo a ti, José Arroyo y familia. Janet García, saludos a ti también. Ana Torres, gracias y saludos a ti. Por acá, Marcos, muchas gracias, Marcos, se le agradece. Sammy Velázquez, mi amigo y hermano, mi compañero desde Florida. Saludos, Sammy, tú que eres saxofonista, tú sabes que estamos hablando con uno de los mejores, así que alegre que estés aquí con nosotros. And so, going back to what I was saying, in the sense that, here we go, listen to this, ladies and gentlemen.
En el misterio de los mares, me dejo llevar por ella. era mi destino. Sigo tu huella. Habla claro. Ella es mi punto de referencia y aquí le rindo mi reverencia. Belén, Belén, alábale, lehuela. Belén, que yo sigo a la estrella.
Tremendo. En este caso, tú siempre, de alguna manera u otra, nos trae algo de nuestras raíces culturales por medio de la música, en este caso la plena, ¿no? En esta canción. Hablemos sobre los invitados, los pleneros de la cresta.
Sí, mira, como tú mencionaste, hay varios invitados en el disco, todos percusionistas o grupos de percusionistas de Puerto Rico. Tú sabes que yo soy puertorriqueño y me gusta representar, y no solo eso, sino que soy también gran admirador de la música de Puerto Rico y los músicos de Puerto Rico. En este caso yo quería presentar un tipo de plataforma para darle un espacio para brillar a todos estos percusionistas brillantes y súper excepcionales de Puerto Rico, e incluirlos como parte del proyecto. Es algo que nosotros hemos hecho en el pasado con proyectos de esta plena y otros, pero no es lo usual. En este caso quise pues aprovechar la oportunidad para incluir estos músicos. Cuando estaba incluyendo la música, ya escuchaba estos instrumentos de la música. En el caso de los plenos de la cresta, en mi opinión, uno de los mejores grupos de plena actuales, si no el mejor y el que más está rompiendo barreras, ¿no? Por muchas razones. Yo he sido fanático de ellos, admirador de ellos por mucho tiempo ya, desde que sacaron sus primeros discos. Y los conozco más o menos. El cantante, por ejemplo, su papá es John C. Martínez, que es uno de los plenos más reconocidos de Puerto Rico. Su hermano Lero también es plenero, cantautor, bombero. Todos los muchachos del grupo vienen de tradición música. Son muchachos que están tocando plena con el corazón, como te dice, pero también musicalmente lo que están haciendo es tremendo. Y entonces pues yo siempre había tenido esta idea de buscar un espacio para ellos, incluirlos, y aquí se dio la oportunidad. Cuando estaba escribiendo el tema, empecé a sentir que era una plena. Yo dije, este es el tema para los plenos de la cresta. Y hablé con ellos, lo hablamos bien chévere, y todo salió de una manera bien orgánica, porque para mí de los métodos que me han funcionado durante el tiempo cuando hacemos este tipo de música y traemos invitados es tratar de que ellos se sientan que se sientan cómodos dentro de su entorno, no sacarlos de su comodidad. O sea, yo pues escribí una plena y mira, ustedes tocan al ritmo, hay unos breaks, este es el coro, después improvisa y haz lo que tú quieras hacer, y acá yo más o menos lo voy manejando, y hicieron, bueno, tú sabes lo que hicieron.
No, le quedó como anillo al dedo. La selección que tenemos en el trasfondo, otro invitado. Esta canción se titula Opresión y Revolución. Oigan los temas, los nombres. Ya hemos escuchado un poco de Taínos y Caribes. Acabamos de escuchar con la plena Navegando las estrellas nos guían. En el trasfondo un poco de Opresión y Revolución. En esta contamos con tu gran amigo, nuestro gran amigo, el gran Pauli Mejías, con quien tú has trabajado en el pasado. A mí me encantó el hecho que lo incluyera porque obviamente Pauli es uno de los grandes hoy día, de los talentosos que tenemos desde la Isla del Encanto, como también Daniel Díaz, el cual vamos a hablar luego. Hablemos sobre la participación de Pauli en esta canción.
Sí, mira, como tú sabes, yo y Paoli llevamos colaborando mucho tiempo. Paoli and we've been collaborating for a very long time. He's not only one of the great percussionists of today, but he's also a very brilliant musician. You know, he's always looking for the next thing, always pushing the envelope, never content, always trying to move into the next thing, and is inspiring to me. And I was trying to find something that sort of fit what he usually does. And this song specifically kind of fit that, not only because of where it's coming musically, but also thematically. I mean, a lot of this song, I mean, of course, you can see by the title, Opresión es Revolución, Oppression of Revolution, is inspired by this idea of revolution caused by oppression, which is something that's happened a lot over the history of the Americas. And in this case, I was specifically inspired by the Haitian Revolution and how that was actually successful.
Yes.
Like that one actually like was able to take off and really succeed. So I was drawn into the sounds of Haitian percussion, Haitian music, and music from Africa, and that has that really raw kind of African feel. And over the years, in many of our collaborations, Paoli and I, we've talked a lot about this idea, a lot about, how our music at its core has that feel, that sort of like connection to the motherland, that rawness connected to the earth. So I felt I kind of just heard it there when Paoli just lay down some drums and create like a drum choir and something that I felt would fit him really well. So it just kind of worked.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you uplift Haiti in this song and in this album, because it's important for us del Caribe and America Latina to see Haiti as very much part of who we are. I mean, all of our great revolutionaries, our great patriots from the past, Haiti was very much part of their whole revolutionary movement. It wasn't like apart. On the contrary, we used Haiti as the focus, the inspiration for what we want to do. At the same time, we've seen the history of Haiti, how oppression and revolution results in even more oppression, because then all those European countries and Eurocentric countries then all banded together and made it, okay, you can have your freedom, but you're going to have to pay. And they're still paying to this day, which shows the reality of what systemic racism is all about when you really get down to it in the bottom of your message. And the fact that Paoli, Paoli's a revolutionary. I mean, you've heard his albums, you've heard his music. Él no tiene pelo en la lengua, así que Paoli te lo dice como es, pa, y te lo canta como es. Y él, este tipo de canción es parte de lo que es el talento del gran Paoli Mejías. En los temas, Miguel, es curioso para mí el hecho de que los títulos reflejan un poco sobre lo que has aprendido y has leído, pero a la vez es como, de nuevo repito lo que estoy diciendo y perdone que lo haga, es como que yo estoy viendo una película en cierto capítulo. It's like one of those old films in black and white where, it goes, shh, then runs, and then it turns a page, and then it's number 2, and then turns the page, number 3.
Yes.
Because each cut is like a small vignette, musically speaking. But it inspires my mind, again, and I'm hoping that the listeners who buy this album, that it inspires them as well, to visualize what it is that you're sharing with us, musically speaking. So as you put the album together, one theme is the whole indigenous history, oppression, revolution, America, rhythm, because you include percussionists. If you were to have a moment with historians and you were sharing with them this music, what is it you want the historians to take away from what you're trying to share?
I try to capture a couple of things, like you said. It's almost like chapters or instances, out of a very, very vast amount of information. I could probably make 10 albums just based on this subject. So I just kind of, captured things that kind of jumped out of the page or jumped out of the stuff that I was checking out or listening, and try to capture that into a project. I think for me, to answer your question, a lot of it has to do with looking into this part of the world, meaning the American continent, North, Central America, South, the Caribbean, and looking at what's happened over the past 500 years, over the past 1,000 years, and seeing all the things that happened because, and all the other stuff that happened for a reason, and all the things that were kind of forced into happening, and how that kind of molded our societies today. We tend to think about the Americas as a very disconnected kind of place where, like, these people are here, these people are here. But at the end of the day, there was a time when it was just like one piece of land with a couple of islands surrounding it. And then, it kind of turned into this other thing. But at the core, it's really all has a lot of the same roots, a lot of the same, stories that kind of forged societies and personalities and identity. So for me, is that, trying to be inspired by the history of this part of the world, how it came to be, and what happened during that process.
Well, I will take it further and say that if I were in a conversation with you and I had historians, you're basically challenging historians to correct history. And I'm not generalizing all historians, but I'm just saying, for instance, you and I being educated in Puerto Rico, when they spoke about Taínos, how many chapters were on the Taínos? One page, maybe?
Not a lot.
How many chapters on the Africans? Half a page, right?
Yeah.
All the chapters were about the Spaniards, right? Los Españoles, los conquistadores.
Yeah.
They uplifted the Spaniard as if they were, gods,
Heroes.
right? and menospreciaron al indígena, menospreciaron al africano. And so I think, from my perspective, if I ever had the opportunity to be sitting next to you and a group of teachers, historians, educators, my hope would be that the dialogue would be one where you challenge their thinking to be much more inclusive, number one, much more historically correct, number two, and challenge them to be much more open to the fact that we are a diverse community of people, but that at a core, there's a history that we cannot forget and that we have to acknowledge has been the root of a lot of things happening on the negative side instead of on the positive side. And so I'm hoping that that day occurs, that you'll have an opportunity to speak with educators and historians and whatnot who have written the history from a Eurocentric point of view, who have uplifted the Europeans, who have uplifted, in the case of Puerto Rico, América Latina, al español, and downgraded and basically denigrated the indigenous people and the African people.
I agree. Y también tengo que decirte, como tú mencionas, hay muchas cosas sobre el acceso a la información que también tiene mucho que ver. O sea, nosotros, pues, criados en Puerto Rico, estudiando en la escuela, pues el libro que nos daban, eso nosotros pensamos que pues eso es lo que hay, esa es la información que hay. Pero hoy en día la información está, eso existe, y lo que hay es que buscarla, tener esa hambre de rellenar esos hoyos que no rellenamos durante nuestra educación o que nunca se nos presentaron. Como tú mencionas, en este caso, la historia de las sociedades originales del Caribe o de Latinoamérica o inclusive de Norteamérica, las cuales no se lee mucho en los libros de historia cuando vamos a la escuela, pero son hechos que ocurrieron, que no se pueden borrar. Entonces, cuando esos hechos se investigan y se documentan, lo que hay es que buscar esa información y rellenar nuestro conocimiento para entonces tener una información más balanceada y más completa.
Y a la vez tener voz, porque la información nos educa y nos da voz para entonces decirlo a voz alta. Time out. Eso no es así, eso no fue así, eso es lo que hay y esta es la razón por la cual estamos donde estamos actualmente como sociedad y como pueblo, tanto en América Latina como el Caribe y aquí en los Estados Unidos, como tú bien has dicho. Estamos escuchando música, la nueva propuesta musical de Miguel Zenón. Le pido a ustedes que estén abiertos a escuchar este tipo de música. Su disco se titula Música de las Américas, en el cual tiene su cuarteto, que son ilustres músicos, Miguel en el saxofón, Luis Perdomo en el piano, Hans Glass. ¿Cómo es que se pronuncia el apellido de Hans?
Yo creo que ni él mismo lo dice bien. That's a hard one. Lavishnik. It's taken me 20 something years to learn it.
There you go. Y Henry Cole en la batería, que también hace un tremendo solo al final. Cuando yo vea a Henry este fin de semana, le voy a decir que yo creo que el solo de él en antillano se va a convertir en el solo parecido al de Joe Morello en Take 5, porque ese solo entre él y Daniel, pero el solo de Yo lo he escuchado varias veces y digo,
Sí, no, es tremendo solo. Y yo se lo dije, me acuerdo cuando estábamos en el estudio, porque hicimos tú sabes, varias tomas del tema.
ajá.
Y yo le dije, Henry, ese es el solo, olvídate de eso, no hay más nada. Y él, no, que esto, lo otro. Y yo, no, olvídate. Tienes que dejarlo porque sometimes you just gotta let it
Let it go.
marinate.
But
You gotta let it marinate. Then you listen to it later. You're like, oh, okay.
y cuando yo lo vea, se lo
No,
voy a decir.
it's great, fantastic.
Se lo voy a decir, van a ver estudiantes jóvenes, niños, adolescentes que van a escuchar ese solo de Henry y lo van a poner over and over again, and then at their house they're going to be practicing trying to do that solo. The same way we did with Joe Morello. I tell you, when Joe Morello went to Puerto Rico, él hizo un taller, he did a workshop en la Casa Margarita, allá en Atorrey.
Claro, sí.
Y hizo su workshop for Ludwig drums, and he did that solo, the Take Five, y todos salimos buscando el disco de Dave Brubeck para ensayar Take Five.
Para estudiar el solo, sí.
Boom, boom. Y estoy seguro que lo van a hacer con Henry Cole, con esa selección musical antillano. Miguel, en esta gira tú tienes el cuarteto, así que no tienes invitados que van contigo. ¿Cómo tú rellenas entonces esa parte que tiene que ver con, por ejemplo, en Bambola y también en la canción donde están los pleneros, etcétera, etcétera?
Pues mira, de la manera que yo escribo muchas veces esta música, yo siempre le escribo como el cuarteto como fundamento principal, porque yo sé que pues la música pues la vamos a tocar mayormente nosotros. Entonces los otros instrumentos que se añaden lo que están es complementando partes que ya están ahí. Y me acuerdo cuando hicimos el proyecto de Esta Plena fue similar. Yo escribí la música para el cuarteto primero, a veces la tocábamos solo cuarteto, a veces la tocábamos con los pleneros, a veces solamente con Tito, en paz descanse, tú sabes, variaba. En este caso fue igual. Yo escribí la música pensando en el cuarteto primero y entonces después pensé, ok, pues se le puede añadir percusión en esta sección o se le puede añadir el vocal en esta sección. Pero cuando lo tocamos cuarteto, la música es exactamente igual, la forma no cambia, los elementos no cambian. Lo que pasa es que hay una capa que se le añade en el disco, que cuando lo tocamos en vivo y no está esa capa de la percusión, pues esa capa no está, pero el resto ya está.
Pero lo básico, la energía y
sí, no, y la música se mantiene igual.
La música se mantiene igual. O sea, esa música es espectacular. Yo he soñado, he tenido la ilusión desde que fuimos la primera vez a Jimmy's Jazz and Blues Club en Portsmouth. Habían anunciado, nosotros fuimos el 31 de diciembre del año pasado, o sea, se va a cumplir un año, para despedir el año con Eddie Palmieri y su orquesta. Y ellos habían hablado quiénes iban a traer y te mencionaron a ti, Miguel Zenón. Y de inmediato cuando yo regresé en la emisora dije, bueno, este lugar es tremendo, tiene que ir y Miguel Zenón va a estar tocando. Miguel Zenón, and it was kept in repeating, well, he's not playing now. Well, he's going to. So this Friday, we're going to be there because you're finally playing.
Maybe why they booked us. Thanks to you.
But we're going to be there because you're going to find the club is one of the best clubs you will ever find when it comes to music. That kind of ambience. It's a beautiful club. I won't say more, so that way you will go in and perceive it and then tell me what you think. And then Saturday, you're playing at a place that's brand new as well, the Groton Music Performance Center. It's been renovated and redone, et cetera, et cetera. They've got 2 rooms. There's one that seats 1,000. The other one seats around 300. I think you're in the smaller room, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And we're looking forward to that. It's only about an hour or 10 minutes away from Boston, so it's not a far drive for us to get there. Because we want to see these clubs and see you in these clubs to see that combination of a good setting, a beautiful venue, and great music coming from you. So we're excited about you coming here this weekend. So those of you who are out there, if you haven't got your tickets yet, Jimmy's Jazz and Blues Club in Portsmouth, New Hampshire on Congress Street. You can have dinner there while you're watching the show. Miguel will be performing there this coming Friday. And then Saturday, he'll be in Groton, Mass., which is about an hour and 5 minutes away from Boston, at the new Groton Music Performance Center, which has just recently been inaugurated. And from what I see, is a beautiful venue. So you have an opportunity to see him twice there in this trip here in Boston. So in this moment of you taking time to read, to understand, to contextualize what you were reading, and then make it into music. As I was reading the books, and thank you, because I think you're probably instrumental in many people buying those 2 books after we found out that you read the 2 books. after I read the books, I had a hunger and and had a better appreciation, if you will, and respect in honoring our ancestors from the First Nations, from the indigenous people, understanding their culture, understanding their spirituality, understanding their wisdom, their connection to earth. And I'll talk about that later on in the program. What did you walk away with after reading those two books, having dealt deeply in plena, in bolero, in all the songbook that you have shared with us about Afro Latin, Afro Puerto Rican music, sonero, etc., etc. How has this continued to inform you? But what did you walk away with in this particular case?
Um, yeah, a lot. A lot. I think mainly one of the main things that I was thinking about. I mean, beyond the fact of what we already mentioned, this idea of like how little we really know, which is like always never ceases to amaze. How little we know and how much information is out there that we just kind of have to go and grab it. But like for example, when I was digging into this book about the Taínos and the Caribes, and reading a couple other things about some of the other societies in Central America. I mean, like Aztecas, Mayas, Incas, all these amazing societies that achieved so much during their time, and their progress what was up to a point kind of cut short, by this encounter with Europe. Um, I was thinking about a lot of what I thought about was like but first of all, when thinking about this society is how, there's this perception from a European perspective of like, we're going in and we're going into this underdeveloped society is almost like the savage kind of vibe. People have, like they don't have a religion, they don't have or whatever or weapons or whatever, and thinking like how much this society's achieved basically on their own. Like this song Navegando. When I wrote that, I was thinking about this societies that were able to travel this ridiculous like long distance, just like basically looking at the stars and learning how to recognize in nature, basically like maps, like their own GPS. And when thinking about the Aztecs and the Incas and Mayas, everything that they achieved with science and medicine and architecture, I mean, in many ways, more advanced to their parallel European societies of their time. So it really made me think about what could have been, what could have been, like what would our world be like today? Of course, it would be different. You and I will probably not be here, be different people. But I mean, you can't help but wonder if the elements have been different, if the ratios have been different, if the slaves hadn't been like forced to come in from Africa to here, you would have forged a different thing. And I mean, it's for me, it's a lot of it is I'm amazed at how history works and how a lot of it is like, this one element or few elements that basically change everything. They change the course of everything else. And you think, okay, what if you took that element away? Or what if you added this other element? What if that other element came earlier or later? A lot of that kind of comes to mind for me. A lot of it is just opening, like basically more questions.
No, I'm with you, because part of that, and you hit a point there, to your point about navigating the stars, their connection to the universe, to Earth, to I mean they understood Earth in ways that many of us are now starting to understand Earth, and hopefully it's not too late, right?
Mhm.
Because they understood Earth as being alive. It wasn't just a non-living organ that was there to feed and do whatever. It was there to be replenished, and had an ecosystem that humanity was part of. Los humanos somos parte del ecosistema de lo que es el mundo, ¿no? Y para mí esa impresión, lo que yo me llevé de los libros más también fue una inquietud de aprender más sobre los indígenas de todos los países de América Latina, el Caribe, etcétera, de aquí del norte también, de entender más el aspecto espiritual, de familia, de humanidad, como también lo que sería para nosotros el norte, ¿no? Because tenían un pensar that was a very different north. It wasn't about becoming rich. It wasn't about materialism. It wasn't about, oppressing the other person, or, it was like, let's make do with what we got and celebrate what we have as being a blessing compared to, oh, we don't have enough. Let's have 20 of this because 20 is better than one. You follow what I'm saying? ¿Entiendes lo que te digo?
Yeah.
Por eso te doy la gracia, because you opened my world into a whole otro canal that I had not been paying too much attention to, and I believe we need to be paying more attention to, in particular now with everything that's happening with the ecosystem y con el mundo entero. Miguel, cuando hablamos de tu propuesta, me doy de cuenta que tú también, a la vez que creas este tipo de propuesta, en cierto nivel, tu música es bien política. Bien política. No solamente este disco, todos los discos tuyos, because I started going back to all your albums, and each one of them, those are political statements you're making with your albums. Cuando el gran Héctor Tito Mato, que en paz descanse, ¿qué será de Puerto Rico? I mean, you're basically stating what a lot of us are thinking that are challenging the status quo of society vis-a-vis justice, vis-a-vis equality and equity, inclusion, diversity, everything that we think should be the right things. Your albums are political statements in my mind. Do you consider yourself a politician in that sense?
I'm not a politician, but I mean, you can't help to be affected by the world around you, and what you think should be happening, and how the world how you think the world should be. It's even though we're musicians and we focus on creating and our craft and all that stuff, the world affects what we do. It's like anything. So it's really hard not to have that information sort of creep into what I'm doing. I mean, it's not. I mean, if I was going to be honest, it's not something that I'm looking to do. It's just, it's there. It's there. It's affecting us all, and it's part of what we are, and it's part of the world. It's part of our history, and there is also with a lot of the things you mentioned. I mean, our music, playing our music, and Música, la Salsa. There's a tradition of being connected to social issues and kind of portraying them through the music. And for me, one of the things that's really important to me about music is, like, you can't go forward without looking to the past, and without looking at the masters and looking at the ancestors and what they left us. And I'm inspired by those things, and I feel like, okay, so I need to follow course. I need to kind of, in my own way, but sort of continue that thread, continue that tradition.
One of the things that you do, of course, is revisit La Bomba Bambola with a young man. Listen. Háblanos sobre Víctor Emanuel.
Sí, Víctor Emanuel es uno de los grandes maestros del barril en Puerto Rico, no solo de la bomba, también de la plena. Víctor viene de una familia de músicos, tiene su propio grupo de bomba que se llama Bomba Evolución en Puerto Rico también. Como muchos de estos músicos, llevamos mucho tiempo tratando de colaborar, y yo quería, cuando empecé a escribir este tema, Bámbula, nada más para hablar un poquito de la raíz de lo que es Bámbula. Bámbula es tanto un ritmo como un baile, obviamente de tradición africana, que viene a las Américas y se establece en diferentes puntos, y está en la raíz de mucha de nuestra música, incluyendo la bomba, incluyendo la samba, incluyendo el jazz, lo que llaman second line, incluyendo el reggaetón. ping, 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 la soca, el calipso, todo eso tiene esa, lo que se llama esa célula rítmica, también se le llama, hay gente que llama habanera, tiene muchos nombres. Pero bámbula es eso. Y yo quería escribir algo que estuviera informado por esa idea de que tenemos una célula rítmica que nos conecta a diferentes puntos del continente. Y pensé, ok, déjame traer un maestro de los bravos y hablé con Vitito, que es como le llaman a él, Vitito y Manuel. Y fue como todos los demás músicos, fue como like a glove. Todo cayó así, fue todo inmediato. Y dije, mira, esto es lo que tiene que pasar, vas a hacer un solo al principio, vas a tocar, te vas a ir por el sicar, después puedes cambiar al QMB, diferentes ritmos de bomba. Todo de verdad que subió tremendo. Y para mí es importante también tener el barril, igual que tener los panderos, porque esos son nuestros instrumentos. Esos son los instrumentos que representan la música, en este caso la música afro-puertorriqueña, y para mí era bien importante incluirlos en el disco.
Bueno, en esta ocasión, felicidad y éxito con esta canción y con el disco completo. Hablemos de nuevo también sobre los integrantes que son los integrantes de tu cuarteto, porque cada uno de ellos, without the percussionists, it's a great album. With the percussionists, it's even a greater album. So talk to me about our friend Luis Perdomo, Hans, and Henry as they move with you into this music that is now Música de las Américas.
Sí, claro. So I've been playing with these guys for a very long time. With Luis and Hans, we started playing together sort of informally and later in a more formal way, probably around 99. So it's been, few decades already of playing together. Henry joined the band in 2005. I mean, he's the youngest member of the band, and he's been in the band for like 17 years. The newest member of the band, he's also the youngest. But it's the kind of thing I know nowadays it's not super customary, to have a band staying together this long. For me, is sort of the obvious choice because I feel that I found like minds and personalities that I like, not only in terms of the way they are, but also musically. I feel like they understand my music. They take it seriously. I wouldn't be able to make these records without them. It would be totally different because I wouldn't be able to write the same music if they weren't playing it, I feel that by this point, after playing together for a couple of decades, we just kind of work. We have our sort of formula, something that's just automatic. The way we put together the music, the way we make records, is we've kind of turned it into a system that really works for us. And I consider myself lucky to have them, as part of my creative platform. Luis is from Venezuela, as you know. He grew up playing salsa music since he was a little kid. He was playing gigs when he was 10, 11, already playing salsa gigs. Hans is from Austria. He grew up playing classical music there, started on violin, eventually moved to bass. Studied at Berkeley in Boston at his young days. And he's one of those, musicians who's so gifted that he could play any style and sound authentic. So a lot of people, ask me, man, how did Hans learn how to play that music? I'm like, man, he's just good. He's just a good musician. Of course, you have to think stylistically. You have to think, oh, man, how does he play, a tumbao, and how can he play bomba and play that? He's like, because he gets to a point, he's so good that he understands it. He studies it and he's able to understand it. And with Henry also, a gifted drummer from Puerto Rico, from Añasco, Mayagüez area, who I've known for a very long time, since he was a little kid. And ever since I met him, I knew that he was going to make a difference. So, with all of them, I just feel very, very grateful.
No, you've got an amazing group of musicians, and I believe your album, if it's not the album of the year, is one of the best albums of 2022, and again, a magnum opus. Before we hear the last two tracks and close our conversation, because pretty soon you're going to have to leave me, there's a song that I heard that I think has been nominated for a Grammy titled El País Invisible, which is a pretty long track, if I remember correctly. I played it. I think it's like 13 minutes, 15. I don't remember how long it is, but it's a pretty long track. It's like a suite. And what captured me was that the makeup of the instruments is what caught my ear. Talk a little bit about that song and that group in particular, El País Invisible. That's the title, right? El
Yeah,
País
yeah.
Invisible.
El
Hmm.
País Invisible, yeah, yeah. That was a piece that was commissioned by an ensemble called Tres. The instrumentation for the ensemble is two saxophones and piano. The leader of the ensemble, Jose Caban, he's from Puerto Rico as well, and that's how we connected. I met him a few years ago at a conference, and I remember we started talking, and it was really obvious that we kind of he's coming from a classical like chamber music group. He's not a jazz musician, but we had a lot of the same ideas about how to connect with Puerto Rico and how to connect with the history and the struggle and all that stuff. So I remember he asked me to write something, and we didn't specify. He said, "I want you to write something for the group and include yourself. And we're gonna commission it, and we'll pay you for the fees, and we'll record it and everything." Uh, and at the time, I mean, we were talking about politics before. I was thinking about this idea of of how us. I mean, in Puerto Rico as a nation, politically for the longest time we've been in this sort of limbo, right? Because we don't really belong anywhere. We're disconnected from Latin America by being a territory of the United States, but at the same time we're not a state. So we kind of live in this sort of like limbo of a place. And there's this writer from Puerto Rico. His name is Eduardo Lalo. A couple of years he won this really prestigious prize called Romulo Gallegos for a book he wrote. And on his speech, he talked about Puerto Rico as an invisible country, un país invisible, which sort of like didn't really connect with one side or the other. And that was really powerful to me to hear. I connected with that. So when I was writing the piece, I was thinking about that idea. I kind of came up with this story about this random island that's sort of floating in the ocean and kind of like, a la deriva, como dicen. And when I started writing the piece, the whole piece is based off the intro to La Borinqueña, to the Puerto Rican anthem. So the whole piece is basically a deconstructed version of that, sort of like with classical instrumentation and classical harmonies and more of an experimental view. I mean, I was glad that he was nominated for a Grammy for Best Instrumental Composition, but even it meant a lot more to me, all this background, everything it represents for me. That meant a lot.
No, and like I said, when I played it, I realized to me, it was like a suite, right? Because it just takes you through these different colors, and it's not a 5 minute piece or 8 minute piece. It's, I think, again, I'm guessing right now, saying it's 15. I don't know how long it is, but I know it was a considerably good long amount of time, which then meant for my ear, I needed to pay attention to it. I couldn't just have it in the background. And it's the kind of piece that you have to spend time listening to what it is that you're presenting and how you're presenting it in that format of the musicians who are playing. Because again, I heard sounds that just in unison were very unique. The 3+U 4 sounded very unique in that kind of piece. Again, you say you're not political. You're not a politician. I agree. You're not a politician. I'm not.
Oh,
A
I am
politician.
political. I'm not. I'm
But you're
just not a
political. But
politician.
you're political. That's what I want to say. You're not a politician, but you are political. And the thing about this is, I think I think about your music today and where you started from and where we are as people, not only our own people back home in La Patria, but in the diaspora. And then I think about all of us as una familia América Latina of Afro descendants, etc. You travel. From when you started traveling with your group years ago to you traveling today, what are you picking up as what you notice in these different countries that you're going to, as far as socially, culturally, politically, in connection to your music?
Well, I would say, like in terms of what we're doing and our music, what we're doing with the band, and the kind of music that I made. I mean, I've kind of made a point through my career of connecting to my roots and my identity as a Puerto Rican Latin American musician playing jazz. So I think initially the expectation was for the music to kind of sound more in an Afro-Cuban kind of vein, more traditional vein. That was kind of a wall that we ran into, especially early on, because the expectation was to hear that, and we weren't playing that. So I think over the years we've kind of built something we kind of build an identity and a language as a group, so that people come to the shows and they know that even though our music is very informed by Latin America and Puerto Rico, and what we are in terms of our culture and history, we do have a very specific sound, and so does the next person. You know what I mean? So I think one of the things that I've picked up over time is that audiences have become a little more involved, a little more informed about what to expect from a show, and the fact, and just because of the fact that you have a Spanish name and your titles are in Spanish, that doesn't mean that it's supposed to sound a certain way. You know what I mean?
I asked that question because when you think about a Groton Music Performance Center, I'm hoping and I expect wholeheartedly that the people who are going to go here are going to be music connoisseurs, music lovers, regardless if it's classical, jazz, blues, R&B. I don't care. They're going to say this is good music, and they're going to walk away saying that was great music. That's what they're going to walk away with. And I think you've hit it on the nail when you say what the expectation or the stereotype of what a musician should play or be playing compared to what a musician is actually playing. Because what you play is your music. That's Miguel Zenón. I hear you. And even when you play with, you did a song, hay una grabación tuya con Pedrito Martínez, de su más reciente disco. Que, again, blew me away, right? But it's like, yeah, but I could close my eyes, not read the liner notes, and my ear would say, I think that's Miguel playing. That sounds like Miguel playing. You know what I'm saying? O sea, que el sonido tuyo ya he reconocido. Miguel Zenón tiene un sonido, a brand that you're going to hear. And when you play with your band, even more so. We're listening to this song in the background, which I think is very important, El Continente. And we're going to cut soon because my boy has to go. And I want to make sure that he gets a chance to say goodbye to all of you. Like he said, he had an hour for us, and it's 5:03, so I've taken him 3 minutes over the time. Let's close with this song in the background as we say goodbye to my dear friend Miguel Zenón. Miguel, de nuevo, te doy la gracia. El disco es tremendo. Acepta el hecho de que yo, cuando lo anuncio, siempre le digo a la gente, your magnum opus. Así que
Gracias.
que lo digo humildemente, but I truly believe this is a great piece of work that you've done and you shared with us. And I just appreciate you opening the door for us to really look into and dig deep into more of our heritage, and in particular the indigenous part of our heritage. So I thank you. And we look forward to seeing you next weekend, Friday, Saturday. Friday at Jimmy's Jazz and Blues Club in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and then Saturday at the Groton Music Center.
Gracias, Jose. Always a pleasure. I want to say hello to everyone who's listening. I hope to see you all next weekend. Playing music is, I always say, is the greatest. So any chance I get to do it is a blessing. So I'm really, really excited to be up there.
Well, we're blessed because you're one of those living angels, and we love you, my brother. We love you and love you, love you. Bendiciones. Nos vemos el fin de semana que viene, si Dios permite.
Un abrazo, mi hermano.
Siempre. Te queremos mucho. Bendiciones. Gracias. So, my friends, that was Miguel Zenón. The new album is titled Música de las Américas. It is an album that I would ask that you consider adding to your music collection. He will be performing next weekend at Jimmy's Jazz and Blues Club in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, on Congress Street, downtown. Check it out on your webpage. And then Saturday, he'll be at the Groton Music Performing Hall, which is a brand new venue in Groton, Massachusetts. Antillano is the name of this one cut. It has a solo by Henry Cole that is to die for. So I'm going to hang out for a few more minutes so we can hear that solo. In the meantime, as we wrap this up, let me do this. I've got a comment here that says, thank you, Jose, for a great interview, and thank you, Miguel, for your music and providing some insight into what you do. Thank you for that as well. So as we listen to this in the background, I mentioned that Miguel's album, Música de las Américas, and the two books that he mentioned in the beginning, I'm going to put them up again for you to look at. It's this one here. If you can pick that book up, do so. I believe there might be a translation in English of this book, if I'm not mistaken. I hope there is. But in any case, that's one book. And then the other one I would suggest you pick up is this one here, Taínos and Caribes. That's in Spanish and in English. Both of those, of course, I think are instrumental in you getting a better appreciation of this new album by Miguel Zenón, Música de las Américas. So this past week, for those of you who have been paying attention to the news here in Massachusetts and Boston in particular, there was a celebration. And the celebration was Earthshot 2022. It took place this Friday in Boston. And it's something that is the creation of Prince William of Wales and his wife, Princess Catherine of Wales. And they were here this past week, Wednesday through Friday. Friday was the announcement of the 5 winners of $1.2 million each around the world who are doing what they can with regards to climate change and correcting all the things that have occurred with regards to the climate in the past century or so. My son and I were able to attend the event. I want to thank Mayor Wu for the invitation for us to be at this particular event called the Earthshot that took place at the new MGM Theater in the city of Boston. And I'm going to share with you the comments that were read by our dear friend Reverend Mariama White Hammond, Chief of Environment, Energy, and Open Space, on November 30th at the Boston City Hall Plaza. It was a welcome for the Earthshot Prize to Boston. And I'm going to quote her here. She said, "To begin our time today, I would like to start by acknowledging the ancestral lands we stand on today. We are gathered on the traditional homelands of the Massachusetts tribe. The Massachusetts have been a part of this land for thousands of years, their lives and their legacy grained in this city. And on this day, I invite all of us to consider the legacy of colonialism and racism, the ways it has impacted people across the world, and its connection, its deep connection to the degradation of land and our planet that we are all seeking to reverse, the stories lost, the species made extinct, but also the persistence of people in the face of oppression and the fundamental dignity of all of our relations." End quote. Reverend Mariama White Hammond, Chief of Environment, Energy, and Open Space, on November 30th at the Boston City Hall Plaza. I share that quote because when I hear the music of Miguel Zenón, Música de las Américas, it makes me think along the lines of the connection between us and the earth and the history of people on this planet and the role that we play, if we're going to play, with regards to what the earth will look like in the very near future for our children and their children as well. So I'm going to leave you with a blessing. This is an Apache blessing in which I've added some words to it. It says, "May you be blessed with music and dance that brings love, peace, and happiness to your heart, and joy and harmony to your life. May you be blessed with inspiration and success. May you be blessed with memorable moments. May you be blessed with strength to continue the good fight. May the sun bring you new energy each day. May the moon softly restore you by night. May the rain wash away your worries. May the breeze blow new strength into your being. May you walk gently through the world and know its beauty all the days of your life. Above all else, may you be blessed with good health." So I leave you with that blessing as we celebrate Música de las Américas with the one and only Miguel Zenón. And I close out with this particular song right here, Antillano, so you can hear the solo by Henry Cole.
Afina ese track, Pepe. Está bien bonito eso. Está desafinado de lo que está. Ey, no mientes ese perro. Ese perro, dale comida, loco. Virgen, dame ayer. Ay, protégeme. Danos tu bendición, Mae. Virgen,
Bueno, familia, de esta manera me despido. Será el próximo domingo. Mañana no tendré programa, pero el próximo domingo sí, si Dios permite, estaremos aquí de 4 a 6 con unos invitados que serán de su agrado. Si Dios permite, estarán con nosotros. Así que hasta entonces, que Dios los bendiga y de nuevo felicidades a Diego Pérez, como también a nuestro querido amigo Jorge Arce, esta noche celebrando el Holgorio navideño aquí en la ciudad de Boston, y ellos serán dos personas homenajeadas. Así que felicidades a ellos. So this evening, I'm leaving in a few because I am emceeing the 33rd annual Holgorio Navideño, in which we are recognizing two very special people. A TAG alumni, Talent and Gift Association. Alumni of the year is Diego Perez, a young writer. You can see his name is Yung Pueblo. And we're also honoring the one and only Jorge Arce for his lifetime achievement here in the city of Boston and throughout the world as well. So until next Sunday when I return with another edition of Con Salsa, there won't be a program tomorrow Sunday, but there will be one the following Sunday from 4 to 6 with some very special guests, and I hope that you will join us for that program. Until then, I love you. God bless you. Cuídense, por favor. Los quiero mucho. Muchas bendiciones a todos ustedes. Y gracias por ser parte de la familia Con Salsa.
Cuando enfrente al enemigo, y a donde vaya yo voy con usted y usted irá siempre conmigo. Que no cure con su H en la chance letal de usted. Salve, fuerza poderosa. Tú que todito lo ves, tú que todito lo ves. Tú ves todita la cosa. Y dale fuerza a lo que es bueno y dale un palo a lo demás. Tu bendición, que tu bendición, que tu bendición, que tu bendición, saca la pena de tanto corazón. Que me cura por dentro y me cura por fuera. Que me cuida la familia en la casa y a mí por la acera. Danos tu bendición, Madre.